Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the news. It is the 16th of May. We're going to be looking at loads of different stories today. We're looking at Ten Hag's future, mixed reports about will he be here, won't he be here, how did that speech, how did last night's victory affect Ten Hag's future. We're in a weird position where we've had one of the worst seasons in the league in Premier League history, and yet everyone you speak to thinks Ten Hag will be here next season. He might not, have saved his reputation completely. Not everyone wants him to be here, but there seems to be a growing feeling that Ten Hag will be Manchester United's manager next season. I want to look into exactly how we've got to that point. Let me know your thoughts on Ten Hag. Should he stay? Should he go? Get your thoughts in the comments. I've also got this vote on the future of VAR coming later in the pre-season calendar. We'll look at the reasons behind that, why I think Wolves it was who have activated the vote on that, as it were. We've also got some potential outs as well. Varane clearly leaving, Martial and a couple of others to be talked about as well. And potential ins. Angel Gomes may well be on the docket for Manchester United transfers this summer. Obviously, former United player. We'll get into that story as well. Nick S says, morning, Joe. Phil Berry says, all right, Joe. Yes, he should stay. Happy to give him one more year, says Matt Bragger. And Phobos Taco Man, fantastic name, says, morning, Joe. Ten Hag in. I believe in the power of the bald. Interesting. Let's start with that then. So Ten Hag had his post-season speech last night. Pretty much tradition at this point for United managers. I think there's been a couple of times where there hasn't been one, but typically speaking, you have the manager speaking during that after that last home game of the season. It was a very short and concise speech, around a minute and a half. But what he did very well, I thought, was two things. One was something he said, and one was something he didn't say. He didn't make any excuses. He didn't say, overlook what's happened. He didn't try to find a reason why we finished 8th. He said, things haven't been always great this season. But what he did very well was focus on the positives. We've got a cup final coming up. I promise you these players will try everything they possibly can. There was a couple of boos, but all the reports from the ground suggest that those boos were from Newcastle fans who were still in the ground. There were definitely multiple large cheers when talking about the cup final, trying to beat Man City, focused on the positives very well. And like I said, he sort of avoided the negatives whilst not trying to make any excuses for them. He says here, look, the season's not over yet. We'll travel to Brighton where we go for 3 points and then go to Wembley. And I promise you that the players will give everything to bring a cup to Old Trafford. There was a big, big cheer after that. And I saw, I think it was Scotty who, obviously on the channel quite regularly, he tweeted last night about there being similarities to the Van Gaal final speech after the end of the season, which of course there was the FA Cup still to come there. Which we won, and he was still sacked. The difference was the reaction from the fans. It was much more muted, much sort of, I don't say, less positive response from the fans to Van Gaal. There were some cheers here and there, but it wasn't that same feeling of excitement that there seems to be, weirdly, amongst United fans this season. Maybe we were closer to winning titles back then. It was only 2 years or 3 years after we'd won the Premier League in 2013, and maybe that was still counting against Ten Hag. We're now over a decade since our last title, and maybe the standards have changed at United. But I think there's another thing going on here, and I wanted to talk about this because we've seemed to have entered a world where, like I said before, United are on to equal our worst ever Premier League season. Looks like finishing 7th is the best we're going to do. It's possible to finish 6th, but it's very unlikely because we'd have to have a 15-goal swing against Chelsea. In fact, 8th is probably the most likely finish, which would be our outright worst finish. And yet, whilst there are plenty of people who would like Ten Hag to leave, it feels as though most people I speak to, and certainly whether you want him to stay or not, people think he will stay. And a lot of people want him to. We've seen it in the comments there, you see it on social media. It feels like people are up for giving this guy another season. And I was trying to work out what's going on, why that is, why you can have the worst season we've ever had in the Premier League. We could get battered by City, we could win the FA Cup, which would be great, but that didn't save Van Gaal. And it feels like there's a decent chance it will save Ten Hag. And I think there's a couple of things that go into this. And for me, the main one is he doesn't seem like he's given up. You watch so many managers, press conferences, after games, talking to the media, talking to the press, at any different club, but let's just stick to United. Jose Mourinho and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, United's two most recent permanent managers. They spoke like they knew they were going for the last few weeks of their tenure. Solskjaer looked like he'd ran out of ideas. He'd visibly kind of changed his demeanour from this sort of happy, upbeat, manager to someone that looked like they were a little bit lost. Jose had just thrown his toys out the pram, was fuming all the time, blaming his players, making strange decisions in games, basically throwing the towel in as he's done at a few different clubs. Ten Hag doesn't have that. And at times he's looked almost delusional with his confidence, talking about, I thought we played really well today. I thought the team performance was good after we lose games and look crap in the process. But he's sort of towed that line between confident and deluded in a way where people are sort of willing to believe him. And I don't know if I've seen this as a United fan watching a manager who's having a terrible season. I don't think I've seen someone do this before. And then I was thinking, is it sort of just a kind of a trick that he's playing on us? Like a house of cards where it's not real? But then I also thought, from a sort of managerial perspective, part of a job as a manager is to convince people that things are sometimes ways that they aren't, if you know what I mean. Like bringing the best out of people, trying to get confidence going. And he's giving an element of confidence to the fans that, by all rights on what we've seen in terms of actual results, we shouldn't have any confidence. We shouldn't believe in him. He should be, he should be sacked, really, when you look at what's happened. But I think the fact that he isn't doing that, the fact that he does seem to genuinely believe he should be here next season, he hasn't given up, he doesn't look crushed by the weight of what's going on, I think that in itself is a very good trait for a manager to have. Because that's good in the bad times that we're seeing at the minute, but in the good times as well, the momentum that you can get behind when you believe that genuinely the manager thinks, wow, things are going really well here, and we're winning games. We saw it last season. I know we got knocked out in the quarterfinals in the end, but there was only 3 games United could have played that we didn't play. We got to 2 cup finals, won a trophy, finished 3rd, and got to the quarterfinal of the Europa League. And I think if it wasn't for that injury to Lisandro Martinez, we probably would have got past Sevilla. He can build momentum in things, and I think it's sort of, I don't know enough about psychology to know exactly how he's doing it, but it does feel as though he's convincing us that he should be here next season. I think that in itself is a good trait to have as a manager. Let me know your thoughts on it. It's very interesting. It's very bizarre what's going on here. And he could definitely still leave, by the way. See it on the thumbnail there. It's 50-50 about his job, and I think it was Jamie Jackson wrote as much yesterday. But the fact that he's still got equal odds to stay, having had the worst ever Premier League season that United have had, is remarkable in itself. There you go, look, Ten Hag's future at United is expected to be decided in the next fortnight, with the chances of the Dutchman keeping his job thought to be 50-50. This was written before the game. So in the 3 games remaining that sort of encompass that fortnight that they're talking about there, he's won the first one. United's plans to decide the manager's fate after the cup final when they face City at Wembley. It's understood his chances of remaining at the post are finely balanced. It's very, very interesting. And then we've got a mix of people in the comments, of course, as you'd expect. Sanil Dewan says Ten Hag out. Shane Hutchinson says, I agree, at this stage both Ole and Jose had lost their mind. Marlon Blood says, you guys treated LVG horribly compared to this guy who gets chance after chance. I don't know who you guys are, but I didn't do YouTube videos when Van Gaal was the United manager, so my track record on Van Gaal is unknown, unfortunately for you. Not really though, says, can't wait for this season to end. Yeah, me too, but if we win a trophy, and here's a world, right? Let's just you talk about delusional. I'm being delusional now, I accept this. And for some reason, my brain hadn't put this together in these terms until very recently. Let's just say, and it's not likely, but it's possible. Let's say West Ham get a draw at the weekend. Let's say Arsenal just pip them to the post. Arsenal win the league. If we win the FA Cup, City go trophyless this season. That is possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. What a sweet world that would be. We end the season with a better trophy haul than Man City. Oh, it's not going to happen, but it could. Mick says Ten Hag in. Yeah, very interesting. It's It's Ando says Ten Hag should stay and let the above new people settle in for a year before making that decision. Yeah, definitely. There's other things going into this as well. The lack of available managers, the fact that the board and the new structures above him, like you said, haven't settled in properly yet. We haven't even got half the people in their posts officially. Sacking the manager would probably be slightly premature, but I could see why they might. I just think the chances of him staying, even if they are only 50-50, is quite remarkable considering the season that we've had. Let's move on a little bit then. Speaking of people staying at Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes has been speaking after the game. So this is Ten Hag here, but I think more crucially than this almost is what Bruno Fernandes said after the game last night. He was speaking to Sky just before he got whisked away by Erik Ten Hag, funnily enough, and he said, as long as Manchester United want me, I will be here. And I think that's the first full indication that we've seen from him that he's going to stay. There was reports the other day of long conversations with Manchester United between Bruno Fernandes and Man United about the future of the club, what he wants from the club. Are they going to be matching the ambitions that he has? And, you know, not only is he probably our best player, but he's also the club captain. The club captain should be a representative of the players and the mindset of the players, not just down from the manager, but back up to the manager and the team above him. What is the plan for Manchester United? He's a very senior figure at United. He's the captain of Manchester United. Those sorts of conversations should be part and parcel of that role. And I think it's fair enough that he wants to know, are we actually going to try and win anything here? Or are we going to get Gareth Southgate in and sign a few 20-year-olds and not be ready to win stuff until I'm 34, 35? Even if it's not the Premier League next season, I think he needs to know that we are going to spend big in the transfer window. We're going to try to change things and try to move in the right direction. Because it feels like generally the feeling around Ineos is positive, but we haven't seen them in the transfer window yet. They could easily spend 70 million this window, sell loads of players and leave us short. We don't know. We don't know how good they are at that. We're optimistic and the stuff that they're doing around the club looks good. But if they have a terrible transfer window and follow it up with another terrible one the season after, Bruno Fernandes will be 32 years old and he'll have wasted the last 2 years of his career. It remains to be seen. But it did seem like the first public indication that Bruno Fernandes will be here next season, unless United want to get rid of him, which I think would be an absolutely terrible mistake. Cap or Die says, I hate Arsenal and I wouldn't want them to win a bagel. Never mind the league. It's really the choice of two evils, isn't it? Heaven Soul says, I'm nervous for Wembley, but we need so much to go our way in terms of luck to have a chance. We do, but we can do it. Yeah, we're going to need luck. City are a better team than we are. So to beat them, you either need incredible tactical outmanoeuvring, which is difficult because Pep's fantastic, as much as it pains me to say it, or you need a bit of luck, or both. Hopefully we can have a bit of both. Let's move on to our next story then, and this is that VAR. Oh, sorry, it's not. It's Martial and Varane. We knew Varane was leaving. He announced it on social media the other day. Martial hasn't announced it for some reason, but I'm sure that will be coming in the following days. He's waving the way he was saying goodbye to people. His contract is up at the end of the season. There's no indication that that's going to get extended. There's no reason for it to get extended, unfortunately. And it's a sad time to see Martial go. I think he was such a symbol of promise when he first came in. And he's had such big, great moments. And he's a player that's so good to watch. His dribbling is fantastic. His finishing is very, very good as well. It's just the injuries. And I think maybe a sort of lack of work rate in the modern game. Maybe that's paired with the injuries. He don't want to hurt himself, so he sort of sometimes looks like he can't be bothered. And his demeanour generally doesn't match a team that is trying to kind of build momentum in terms of effort and pressing and all that sort of stuff. So I just think it's the right time for him to move on. Varane, another one. We probably got him, well, Fergie wanted him 10 years earlier, didn't he? So if we'd have signed him as an 18-year-old, who knows where he could be now. But yeah, I think, again, he's a player that seems to be quite focused on the sort of the end of his career. He's retired from international football. He's spoken about concussions and problems that he's had as a footballer and putting his body through it and how he doesn't want to do that anymore. And I think obviously I don't want players getting hurt for Manchester United, but I think he's thinking about the end of his career a lot more than we need at the minute. We need people who are on the way up, who are kind of building their careers rather than thinking about how long's left. Let's move on to this VAR thing here. This is So it's Wolves that have brought this in, but presumably they're going to have spoken to other clubs to have an idea of whether they've got some backing on this. And this is that the Premier League clubs are to vote on the scrapping of VAR next season. On the June the 6th, all Premier League clubs will vote as to whether to get rid of VAR in its entirety. The vote would need 14 out of the 20 clubs to agree to it, a 2/3 majority, slightly over 2/3, but you can't get 2/3 of 20 majority. And if so, VAR would be removed from the Premier League. So there's obviously a few things that go into this. We've got the list, I think, of reasons from Wolves to say why they've brought this in. So let's read through these. The impact on goal celebrations and the spontaneous passion of football that makes football special. Frustration and confusion inside the stadium due to lengthy checks and poor communication. A more hostile atmosphere with protests, booing of the Premier League anthem and chants against VAR. I mean, that one, who cares? Overreach of VAR's original purpose to correct clear and obvious mistakes. I completely agree with that. Now over-analysing subjective decisions and compromising the game's fluidity and integrity. That one is, for me, up there with the making it difficult to celebrate goals. They're the two big ones for me. VAR has become this sort of bloated catch-all safety net for referees, when really it was meant to stop players diving and getting away with it. Or, oh my God, have you seen that? The ball crossed the line and we didn't see it. Or, look at that, the ref didn't even see there's a player behind him. Or the linesman fell over and he didn't see that someone was 2 yards offside. We've got to correct that. These are the things it was meant to be, clear and obvious mistakes, not someone is a fraction offside, or did that touch someone's sleeve, or was it their bicep? And like, it's become ridiculous. Diminished accountability of on-field officials due to safety net of VAR, leading to an erosion of authority on the pitch. That's another good one. The refs just rely on VAR to be there for them, so they don't have to make big decisions, which then means that to overturn those big decisions, VAR has to have judged the ref to have made a mistake rather than just having not seen it. So that then raises the bar for what is given and what isn't, sort of unfairly. Continued errors despite VAR, with supporters unable to accept human error after multiple views and replays, damaging the confidence in officiating standards. Disruption of the Premier League's fast pace with lengthy VAR checks and more at a time. Kind of already said that one. They could probably take that one out. I think they've already said that, haven't they? Frustration and confusion inside the stadium due to lengthy VAR checks. That's the same as the second one, isn't it? Constant discourse about VAR decisions often overshadowing the match itself, and erosion of trust and reputation, with VAR fueling completely nonsensical allegations of corruption. Firstly, Sky Sports' choice of what to bold and not to on that graphic is perplexing and inconsistent at best. I can't tell why they've decided to have some things in bold and some things not, and it's made it very difficult for me to read. But I completely agree. And people are saying, oh, if you get rid of VAR, then what about this? We can always bring it back in 7-8 years once the technology is better. What we know right now is the technology isn't good enough. We're seeing things like subjective offsides, where Harry Maguire doesn't touch the ball, doesn't stop anyone else from touching the ball, isn't part of a goal, and yet because he went for the ball and then the ball was played across and tapped in at the back post, United are having goals ruled out. And it's not just United, but obviously I remember the United ones more clearly. You know, we have ones where Garnacho hits the ball into Romero's arm. Every day of the week that's given as a penalty, and it wasn't on that occasion. And then, of course, the inability to celebrate goals with any confidence at any time, because not only was the guy who scored offside or not, but then Harry Maguire, who never touched the ball, who didn't stop anyone else from touching the ball, could stop a goal from counting. Not only that, 25 seconds ago, one of our players who wasn't on the ball accidentally tripped someone up on the edge of his own box, and now the goal has been cancelled for that. It's just become anything that interferes with the ability to celebrate goals should be taken so carefully in terms of decision making. Any decision that does that should be considered and reconsidered at great length before you interfere with how it is to celebrate a goal. Because that is all football is. Celebrating goals, celebrating wins is the whole reason we watch football. That is 90% of the reason you watch football is for those moments. And if you're interfering with them even slightly for no good reason most of the time, then that has to be really considered. And I think once the offsides are semi-automatic, maybe we can keep that. We can keep goal line technology because that works, and it, other than that one mistake against between Sheffield United and Villa, I think it was, whoever it was, that works. The foul's subjective. A lot of it is just subjective. If you're having 3 people look at something that's subjective as opposed to 1 or 2 or 3 on-field people, what's the difference? Except it takes loads of time, you can't celebrate things, and the game gets stalled. I think once things become 100% accurate, like the offsides, like the goal line technology, we can bring them in one by one. But this whole VAR thing of any foul, any handball, anything, any distance back from a goal, and we're going to disallow the goal, it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. AJ says players dive with VAR and get away with it every game. They do. Tony Morgan says the technology is fine. It's the people using it that are the issue. They haven't learned how to best use it efficiently after several seasons. I said this yesterday and I'll say it again. You say that, and I get your point, theoretically, but this is video-assisted referees. Video assistant referee. This isn't video automatic referee. This isn't, it happens, you look at a screen, the technology does the job for you and it says yes or no. You're just sending it to more humans. There's always going to be human error there. Whenever humans are involved, there is human error. So you cannot divorce the two things. The technology isn't fine because it relies on humans to operate it. The goal line technology is great because there's no human involved. Once we get the automatic offsides, great. The human involvement is very, very minimal there. Once there's a human involved, you cannot say the technology is fine, but it's the people using it. Because if someone has to use it, then that is the technology. And you can't take those two things apart from each other. I would say get rid of it and slowly bring in features one by one when they are absolutely ready. Instead of having 18 different features all at once, you're checking red cards, you're checking offsides, you're checking pullbacks, you're checking this, that and the other. Instead of doing all of those things, let's just bring things in when they're actually ready. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Let's move on to our next story then. And this is Angel Gomes. I'm going to skip over this pretty quickly. United consider incredible re-signing of Star to rectify Solskjaer error. Great. According to pretty much no one, Man United might be interested in Angel Gomes. Okay, next story. Do you know what? I'm impressed by how well he's done, and I'm glad that we're seeing some of his potential in France. But I think this link is sort of spurious at best, and I don't think it's going to happen. And if it does, we'll come back to it. And finally, then Thomas Frank responds to Manchester United speculation. If we can go down to see what he's actually said there, he's obviously been linked with the United job. He seems like one of the managers in the frame if Ten Hag were to go. He says there, I'm really happy where I am. Brentford is close to being the perfect club to be at. I can see myself being here for many more years. I'm close to the owner, to the sports director, everyone around the club. Brentford is a club where I really feel at home. I mean, he hasn't said I won't leave, but what he said is I'm happy here. That to me is a kind of non-statement. Obviously, he's not going to leave Brentford on bad terms, so whatever he says is going to be positive. I don't know if I want Thomas Frank at Manchester United. I don't think he's quite got the CV, but we may be looking in a different direction these days. Glenn F says Joe Smith out, and then Jatoru says Joe Smith in. Interesting, isn't it? There's different opinions there. We're going to wrap it up there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Ten Hag's future, Bruno Fernandes's future. What do you think of this potential vote on VAR being scrapped? We're going to be back later on today as well with Off the Bar. Me, Jay and Stephen House will be looking at all of the latest stories around Manchester United. Thank you for joining us. Hit subscribe as well if you haven't already. Click that button. We're trying to get to 750,000 subscribers by the end of the season. We're not far off. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed, click the button and a ticker's going to go up in front of your very eyes. It's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in a bit.